European politicians gathered for an online meeting on October 12th. We all listened to these powerful messages of young
Good morning and welcome, ladies and gentlemen, to the Digital High-Level-Konferenz on the new EU-Roma Strategic Framework for Equality, Inclusion and Participation until 2030. This is a joint event of the German EU Council Presidency and the EU Commission. So, what brings us all here today? The EU framework for national Roma integration strategies up to 2020 is ending soon. The European Commission has taken the initiative for a post-2020 framework that was published on the 7th of October.
What is this high-level conference today all about? It is basically all about home affairs policy. Because home affairs policy in the EU concerns the day-to-day life of hundreds of millions of people in this wonderful continent. And home affairs policies wants to ensure that we can all live in our own very specific individual way in a world of freedom and security, and to protect the unique way of living together in this continent and in this political union. And it's all about today the threats that this model is faced, the threats that are coming from a variety of extremist positions, of anti-democratic groups, of the enemies of open society. To underline that this fight against extremism, the fight against right-wing extremism, and the violence that stems from that behavior has become a central issue of German policy.
Respect for human dignity, equality and human rights are among the fundamental values of the European Union. Despite this, discrimination, anti-Gypsyism and social exclusion are still an everyday reality for many Roma people across the EU. In order to change this, we all need to work together. The EU and the national, regional and local authorities must join forces in order to prevent growing inequalities as a result of COVID-19 and to tackle anti-Gypsyism. Public authorities cannot achieve this alone. To be successful, we need to actively involve all stakeholders, including social partners, civil society, the private sector, and above all, Roma as change makers in a spirit of genuine partnership.
The strategic framework on the equal participation of Sinti and Roma, submitted by the EU Commission, is a historical opportunity to end the exclusion of our minority and raise awareness of the exclusion, thereby fighting and overcoming century-old anti-Gypsyism. What we need to this end is a clear commitment of all EU member states, and we also need a recommendation of the Council of the European Union to be adopted at the earliest opportunity. At the beginning of this year, the murderous attack of Hanau in Germany showed how urgent it is to fight right-wing extremism at all levels.
It centuries old form of racism, and it became a disease of our majority societies. It needs urgent cure, as in so many cases it led not only to treating our people as third-class human beings, but it led to killings. Nowadays, more than 80% of Romani people are paying the price of the negative attitudes towards them, living in precarious conditions, without equal access to water, electricity, housing, education, health, or employment. It is exactly anti-Gypsyism which forbids them opportunities for a better life.
It is quite clear for us that everyday discrimination, humiliation and other types of prejudice is something that we need to fight, not only with a light-hearted approach, but what is more important for us, with clear determination.
Fighting anti-Gypsyism and fostering the inclusion of Roma not only requires a comprehensive approach, but also a renewed commitment of all stakeholders.
The proven experience of the European Roma Institute for Arts and Culture is that we cannot combat anti-Gypsyism without a rich cultural ammunition. A positive vision where an effective counter-narrative and a strong counter-representation is a must.
And I think that, as the name of this panel says, the key to it is empowerment of Roma communities.
Topics such as education, employment, healthcare, housing, and equal treatment have to be a discussion involving young Roma. Real participation and social inclusion will only be achieved if Roma youth are given a role at all levels of society and can play a role in decision-making. We always hear that Roma youth are the future of Europe, but now we want to see that Roma youth have a voice in the European future.
Next question is for Ms. Zalewska. What are the necessary conditions for civil society organizations to ensure the equal participation of Roma? What are the challenges?
Currently, we see many Roma who are empowered and who have the capacity to share the voice of the community among NGOs only. But we rarely see Roma being part of political parties or of governmental bodies.
The next question is for Mr. Strauss. How can it be assured that the respect to the culture of Roma? Could you give an example of ways to promote culture?
Specifically in our state agreement, it was agreed that the culture and tradition and research into culture and tradition is promoted by the minority, and in public presentations, the main responsibility is borne by the minority.
May I implore us, as this conference does, to never forget that non-discrimination, the battle against discrimination, and the combat of hate, of anti-Gypsyism, must go hand in hand. If we don't fix one, we won't fix the other. We'll only fix both if we attack both simultaneously.
Vieme, čo robiť nemáme. Respektíve, dnes vieme, čo robiť máme a musíme. Je to jedinečná šanca pre nás všetkých. Poučiť sa z minulých chýb, pádov, ale aj neúspechov a pokračovať v začatej ceste. Ambícia nestačí. Očakávame reálne skutky.
Indicators and targets are critical for policy learning, yes. But it's about more than that. Quantitative and qualitative measurements enhance accountability, which along with participation and transparency is a key element of the human rights approach to policy making. Measurement gives us the hard data to back up accountability.
For the first time, indicators are proposed to assess progress and the situation, but this requires an improvement in the data collected. In particular, above all in Germany, Roma and Sinti are often critical of having the data collected, and that has to be taken into account. But in recent years, also with the involvement of organizations of self-representation, there has been a discussion as to what kind of data is necessary in order to depict the dimension and the forms of discrimination.
We face particular challenges due to the differences in our national legislation regarding the collection of ethnic data and precautions of the Roma towards the data collection. Therefore, we must work in cooperation and build trust with the Roma communities at all phases in an inclusive and equal manner.
No one, and by no means the most vulnerable, should carry disproportionately the burden of the epidemic. However, the Roma living in remote and poor neighborhoods had suffered, not just from the health and economic impact of the crisis. In some member states, and I regret to say this, Roma have been also portrayed as a public health threat. This is unacceptable. It's unacceptable that instead of help and support, they received more discrimination.
Across countries, Roma were faced with starvation after losing their income and possibility to have any means to buy food. Our respondent reported that general authorities did not provide them with masks, disinfectants, or food while during lockdown or confinement.
We must highlight the essential role played by the NGOs that have worked closely with the most vulnerable people, because without their local commitment, these people would have been even more unprotected and exposed to even more severe consequences.
We have to act together. We have heard about how international organizations, how member states, how at the local level representation, how the civil society, so work together in order to mitigate the strong impact of pandemic on one of the most disadvantaged groups in the world.
Amare slike, amare trajura, sa kana akate, vi dureder najsam dikle, amen akana a vas vizualno.
Diversity of the culture of Sinti and Roma was made visible in the contributions during the breaks. If you see this as your target, you must also create the framework conditions to protect identities. This is the guiding principle of the German minority policy and should also be a consensus throughout Europe.
Today, it is a great opportunity to reaffirm our commitments and to start fulfilling them.
In all these areas that I touched upon and that have been touched upon during this meeting, we have not presented any final strategies or final solutions today, but we all know we have to do more. We have to do more for a diverse, for an open, cosmopolitan Europe where Roma are a clear part of it.
This is the right time to build on the momentum and to unite our efforts to deliver on a union, on a true union of equality that strives to achieve more social fairness and equality in all senses of the word, including for our fellow European Roma citizens.
Young, Roma, and proud.